And I think this is a phrase again that you've been using recently, where you say in your book about stillness, we live 2 feet away from a screen that is noisy. But you did just that with your Night in Kathmandu. You were literally living 2 feet away from a noisy screen across continents. What did you discover when you looked at that noisy screen in all these different countries?
Kamla, thank you. That's another wonderful question. And before I answer that, I will say you began by asking if I'm a travel writer. And I think insofar as I am, it's because I love challenging myself, and every book is a new kind of journey for me, and I want to look around a corner to a place I haven't been. So you're exactly right. My first book, Video Night in Kathmandu, is saturated with detail. Every sentence has 14 different details, because in those days it was hard to get information about anywhere, and not many people could go to Tibet or Brunei or whatever the places I was describing, so I wanted to take as many as possible. Now, as you know, I keep my details out of my writing as much as possible, so I'm almost writing a book the opposite or the counter to Video Night in Kathmandu, and now that is a perfect example of data obesity, and now I'm trying to practice data slimming, I suppose, or whatever the right term is. And having said all that, I almost forgot your question. No, that's right, and your question was about what I saw traveling through those 10 countries in 1985. And I think it was as proof that I never really changed, though I pretend to. It was a reflection of what I was just saying, which is that India, for example, in those days was beginning to get certain American elements in there, but I felt it was just as Indian as it always had been, and would take American influences, as it had taken British influences, and influences from every corner, and wrap them into that wonderful mosaic that is entirely Indian. And that China in those days had just opened up to Coca-Cola and the like, but I felt it would translate it into Chinese terms, that it wasn't going to become a suburb of Detroit or Atlanta, that each country in the world draws from the same pool of often American pop cultural images, but converts it into its own context, its own history, and therefore its own language, and makes it something radically different. So when I was a boy, I used to be reminded of that old line about England and America being two countries separated by a common language. And now I think we're 200 countries separated by a similar pop cultural language. So all the world is going to McDonald's, drinking Starbucks, and watching Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, but in each country they mean something radically different.